Time for our weekly NBA Roundup with Tom Haberstroh. I'm Ahmed Freed. Whoa! You're actually here. This is the first time. And you look good. You dressed up for the occasion as well.
I'm just excited you wore a blazer.
I wasn't going to, and then I saw you were outclassing me once again. I have to find a blazer. So we did that, and we have the opportunity to talk face-to-face about some of the big news that's going on in the NBA, because there is quite a bit of it. And we'll start with the trade with Portland and Sacramento. We got Kent Bazemore, Anthony Tolliver, a couple future second-round picks going over to Sacramento. You got some salary relief going over to Portland. What do you make of this deal?
Yeah, this seems like a step one of a three-step deal for the Portland Trailblazers. They look like they're going to be moving some salary here, not just with this deal, but they cleared about $12.5 million salary cap relief, and their luxury tax bill, which was the biggest in the NBA for a team that was 7 games under 500, doesn't really make much sense. And people around the league were wondering, are they going to try to get under the tax this season? Because they see that the season isn't going as well as they had hoped. Are they going to try to get under the luxury tax so that the repeater tax in future seasons won't be hitting quite as soon? So it looks like this is the step one of a 3-step deal, which is number 2, unload Hassan Whiteside's contract, which is an expiring deal, over $25 million that they might unload, try to get even that tax bill even further down, and then they could trade their new guy, Caleb Swanigan, for cash consideration. So they basically get under the luxury tax, because right now Trevor Ariza isn't a guy that's going to put him over the top. Yeah. This was a cash dump move for the Portland Trailblazers, and it seems like trading Hassan Whiteside and then trading another player will get them under the luxury tax so that they can push that down the road.
How much has Portland had to pivot, and how much does this affect their future from what they were thinking their future would be just a few months ago?
Western Conference Finals to out of the playoffs and doing salary dumps. That is not what any Portland fan wants to see. But at this point, this is the most prudent thing to do, is to understand that there's a lot of teams, the San Antonio Spurs, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Phoenix Suns, the Minnesota Timberwolves. The list goes on and on of teams that they would have to leap to get into the playoffs. It's a tall order for Portland, and the best thing for them is to build for the future, and moving this money off is probably the best thing for them. But it's it's been a disastrous season for them.
A lot of teams ahead of them, too, making moves. Here is the full screen, what the Kings get and what the Trailblazers get. And the Kings, there was some word that maybe Kent Bazemore would not be long in Sacramento, but it seems like they're going to keep him for at least a little bit.
Yeah, and the thing for them here is that they get the 2 second-round picks, trading away Ariza after he has been an okay 3-and-D player for them. But this is the 4th team now. Portland is the 4th team that is trying to see if Trevor Ariza still has anything left at this stage of his career. He's age 34. And he was a great player for the Houston Rockets a couple years ago, pushing the Golden State Warriors to the brink. But he's not quite the same player. The Washington Wizards have tried him, the Phoenix Suns last year to start the season, and now the Sacramento Kings have moved him to Portland. So 4 teams on the cusp of getting into the playoffs have tried their hand with Trevor Ariza. But it looks like they were able to get off that contract and also get 2 second-round picks, which is a good move for Sacramento.
So Portland trying to figure out where they are. Sacramento, another team trying to figure out where they are. LA Clippers think they know where they are. They got a team that is primed to make a deep run in the postseason if they can get their guys completely healthy. They're doing the load management thing with Kawhi Leonard. Paul George has missed some time now with a hamstring. Any worries there at all with Paul George and these stars for the Clippers?
Oh, yeah. There's significant worry with Paul George because hamstring injuries linger. It's not something that you ask Chris Paul, former Clipper, about hamstring injuries. It is something that at this stage of your career, when you've had all these miles, that it tends to linger. And if you don't come back with a very, very very constructed, sophisticated regimen, coming back and ramping up your minutes, this is something that could be worrisome come playoff time. And I think this is number one. All teams around the league who are getting back their star players need to watch this situation and see if we rush back a Stephen Curry, a Klay Thompson, a Zion Williamson, this is what could happen, because Paul George did not have a training camp or a preseason to ramp up his minutes, and he was thrown into the fire and said, look, we need you to be a superstar for us. And sometimes these soft tissue injuries like hamstring issues, more often than not, they're overuse issues. And so when you have a guy like Zion Williamson, Stephen Curry, and Klay Thompson, you need to make sure you are conservative with those minutes, that you don't overdo it, because they don't have the luxury of having a preseason training camp. With Paul George, this is something that might linger, and he's been out for a long time, and it could extend into, after the All-Star break, which is something that no Clippers fan wants to see their new player have to deal with.
You do see with the Warriors, Klay Thompson out on the court, seems like pretty much every pregame with a headband on, Zion trying to get back in the lineup. Steph Curry, you haven't seen quite as much. It does seem like the Warriors are all in on the idea of this is a lost season and trying to get one of those top picks and get a player similar to a Ja Morant that we see over with the Memphis Grizzlies right now. And that is a team that is on a serious roll, 7 in a row. Ja Morant has averaged 19 points in that 7-game winning streak. This is a team on the rise that all of a sudden looks like maybe they're in the playoff mix.
Yeah, who would have thought? Andre Iguodala definitely didn't see this coming because he hasn't played. He's been basically sitting out because he wants to play for a contender. And yet his team, the Memphis Grizzlies, might be the team that he can help the most, is just having a veteran locker room guy who can play amazing perimeter defense. And he thought he would be doing that for a contender. But, man, the Memphis Grizzlies might be a playoff team here. And Ja Morant has been sensational. I love Ja Morant coming out of college. People thought that, his game might not translate at the NBA level because he's too small. You look at Trae Young, a similar skill set, maybe not above the rim like Ja Morant, but the deep threes, the handle is crazy. I think what you see from Ja Morant is just the beginning. If he adds a three-point shot, this is an MVP candidate every year. But I would say also this, Dylan Brooks, people don't know that name at home, but he's averaging 20 points over his last 8 games. He's been an excellent two-guard for them next to Ja Morant. And people don't know it, but this team has just a lot of really good, talented players that I would not want to play with them in the first round of the playoffs. They're going to be like the Clippers last year, where they're going to make any team work really hard because they got nothing to lose, and I would not want to face this up-and-coming Memphis Grizzlies team.
With a star in Ja Morant, who maybe doesn't have that three-point shot, but he's shooting 59% in those last 7 games that they've all won, so efficient on the court. So that is a team that is rising. This is why sometimes it's cool to have that 82-game season, although I know you've talked about reducing that number. But you do get these trends. You get a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, middle of the year, going on a stretch. You get a team like the Houston Rockets, a team we think is going to be there at the end, but here now they've lost 4 of their last 5. James Harden said, quote, "We're going through a tough time right now." Tough times don't last long, though, he says. You think this one will last a little longer for the Rockets?
I never liked the deal in the first place, trading Russell Westbrook and getting back, trading Chris Paul and getting back Russell Westbrook. I always thought that Chris Paul was a great fit next to James Harden because he's a great shooter. And when you got Russell Westbrook, man, that second action where James Harden is trying to go one-on-one or trying to go in the pick and roll and he has to kick out to Russell Westbrook, what happens then? He's one of the worst high-volume shooters in NBA history, if not in the worst high-volume shooter ever. And I think with this system, they need James Harden to create almost everything in the half court because they can't give it to Russell Westbrook and expect an efficient offense. He's not a great defender. Chris Paul is a great defender. You're seeing in OKC this year, he is great when he has the opportunities. And when you're playing next to James Harden and maybe they don't have the best on-ball chemistry, I will say this, just because Russell Westbrook and James Harden are friends off the court doesn't mean they're a great relationship on the court. With those two guys on the floor, Russell Westbrook and James Harden on the floor, they've outscored opponents by 6 points every 100 possessions. Chris Paul, in his first year, 13. They've outscored opponents by 13 points every 100 possessions. So even though they might not have had great chemistry off the court, on the court, there's no doubt Chris Paul's a better fit.
And for a team that's built to win now and make a deep run into the postseason, it is weird to have, you're experimenting with new superstar players together, and you're also experimenting with a lame duck head coach and Mike D'Antoni. It does seem like it's just a weird time in Houston right now.
It is, and we're not even talking about the China controversy before the season that obviously disrupted things in that organization. So I think there's a lot of things that are going sideways with the Houston Rockets to get into the season, and now you're seeing, I just don't love the fit with those two players, James Harden and Russell Westbrook. It just seems like one player wants to play a certain way, another player wants to play another way, and you don't have enough defense to combat the issues that they have for James Harden and Russell Westbrook. Right now, they're below average defense, and with any Mike D'Antoni offense, you have to make sure that you have a defensive backbone, like a Sean Marion that was so good for the Phoenix Suns back in the day. They don't have that type of player right now, and they're showing it. They're really struggling. If their offense isn't working, they don't have that backbone.
One of the big stories in the offseason, for sure, was the Houston Rockets and how they would perform with the two superstars there. One of the other big stories was the New Orleans Pelicans getting a superstar from Duke University, Zion Williamson. It's just taken a little bit longer to see him on the court for the first time of the regular season. We'll see that coming up on Wednesday against the Spurs. What do you make of it? Because there was some talk that maybe we won't see him at all, or maybe just the last couple of weeks of the season. We're going to see him about at the midway point.
Yeah, they got to be very careful here. because he has been reconstructing his mechanics out there, and they want to make sure that when he jumps and lands that he's not putting undue force on his joints. He's had a couple of knee issues over the past year. They had him sit out of the summer league, so there is some concern here that just because he's back does not mean that he's going to be back for the rest of the season, because they've already made overtures that they're going to rest him on second nights of back-to-back. I am really excited for Zion Williamson. He is the best ticket in town. If you were going to go see an NBA game this year, make sure it is Zion Williamson. But I just worry that when you're looking at his mechanics, the way he walks around, is that something that they have been very careful about is that they don't want to rush him back. And the original timetable was 6 to 8 weeks. It's been a lot longer than that. And I just hope that this guy stays healthy, because he is the best ticket in town.
What's the ceiling for Zion? You think fully healthy, incorporated into the NBA style, what's his ceiling?
There is no ceiling. We're talking about a guy who's 6'6", about 300 pounds, but he moves like Derrick Rose, MVP Derrick Rose. He is so quick. He is a guy who is there is no comp for him. You can say Blake Griffin, you can say Charles Barkley, you can say all these players. They're not Zion. Zion is so much more talented than people thought coming into Duke. He left the season running fast breaks and making these passes down the court, and where you're like, wait, this guy's more than a dunker.
Sure.
And I think you're going to see when he is in this system with Alvin Gentry, they're going to be running up and down the floor with Brandon Ingram. It is going to be sensational to watch his on-ball skills. It's way more than what Blake Griffin and Charles Barkley had at this stage.
Tom Haberstroh in person. Next time we do this, maybe I'll wear the tie.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, come on.
Well, we'll do
you can't have me show you up twice.
You're right. Tie next time. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Ahmed.